Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this LRQA webinar. So the purpose of this webinar is topic specific, and it will cover the ASME code services and certification. Before we start this webinar, just would like to introduce the team who are on the panel. So of course we have Dr. Parvan here, who is our ASME Code Service Technical Manager, and myself is Saif Al-Ubaidi, and I'm General Manager of Middle East and Egypt. So let's start. So the next slide, please. Just to inform everybody on this call, there'll be a recording that we will be recording this session, and it will be shared with everybody that is available on this call. If you don't mind any questions, if we can make sure that all the questions are shared in the chat box. You have the chat box to the right hand side of the screen. So any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put that in the chat box, and we will make sure all these questions are covered in the end of the webinar. Also, in the end of the webinar, there'll be a short 3-question survey on the webinar, and we would really appreciate your feedback on this, and this will be shared at the end of the presentation. So next slide, please. Why LRQA? So LRQA, of course, have issued certification approvals for more than 50% of the top 200 Financial Times global index companies. So we're well experienced in this field, of course. Of course, LRQA is the first certified body to be accredited against the ISO 17021 accreditation requirement. We also hold, in terms of UCAS, accreditation number 001. Worldwide basis, we are available in 40 offices worldwide, and we also represent close to 49,000 clients on a worldwide basis. We also hold 60,000 approvals and are represented in 120 companies and hold more than 30 global accreditations. Here in the Middle East, we are focused on in 5 main regions. We're focused in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt. Our ASME services in terms of compliance will remain as one of our core businesses that we will follow here as LRQA. And this is one of the topics that we want to share with some of our clients in this regard. So let me not take up too much of your time and pass it on to my colleague Parvan, Dr. Parvan, who will take us through this webinar.
Thank you, Saif, for the good introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our ASME webinar. My name is Parvan Chaftarov, and as Saif mentioned, I'm the ASME Services Manager of LRQA Verification Limited. My background is purely technical, mechanical, and international welding engineer. For ASME, I'm inspector and supervisor, both BPV and nuclear. I'm also representing a couple of ASME committees to the Board on Pressure Technology Codes and Standards, mainly to Section 1, 2, 5, 8, and 9. And I'm also a member of 4 BCA committees. This is the Board on Conformity Assessment, both related to certificate holders and authorized inspection agencies. It's my pleasure to give a presentation today for you on the topics you see on the screen, starting with a short introduction of our agency, followed by brief resume of the current ASME conformity assessment programs. And after this, I'm going to present to you some common deficiencies being recorded by ASME team leaders during joint review, because no matter if your companies are certificate holders or potential certificate holders, those deficiencies are really useful as information to see what is considered a deficiency and how to avoid occurring those deficiencies when you have ASME joint review. The second technical topic will be dedicated to the qualification certification of ND personnel, a topic which is always relevant. And I'm going to show you those changes in edition 2021, which should have been considered when the employer's written practice is revised. Of course, there will be a Q&A session after this, and don't be shy, ask questions. We do want to be as much supportive as we can to you, and this is probably the right moment to tell you that we do plan a lot of webinars in 2023. So please put in the chat box the topics which might be of interest to you and your companies. This will be considered, and again, a lot of webinars are going to be done in 2023, also because a new code edition is going to be published in July 2023. So we do want to support our clients and to present the relevant changes in 2023 edition to you. So let's start. This is our agency, LRQA Verification Limited. Some of you may know that we are the successor of Lloyd's Register Verification Limited. We changed our name late 2022, and we got our accreditations transferred from Lloyd's Register to LRQA Verification Limited from ASME, the national board. We have full accreditation scope, including Section 3 and Section 11, Section 3, all divisions. There are only 3 agencies worldwide with full accreditation scope, and one of them is LRQA Verification Limited. We are happy to have inspectors supervisors in more than 40 countries, and most of them are really very experienced. They have 20+ years experience in the ASME domain. So one of our strengths is really the experience and the competency of our personnel. We do realize the need of being represented in ASME committees, because being in the committees, we are very well informed of what is going on, what is coming up in the next edition of the Boil and Pressure Vessel Code. Of course, through this representation, we maintain our technical competency. So we have 16 LRQA representatives in ASME committees right now, and we are represented in 24 committees to the Board on Pressure Technology Codes and Standards. These are all sections of the Boil and Pressure Vessel Code. And we have representation in 5 Board on Conformity Assessment committees. We have clients in more than 50 countries, and we're happy to cover all ASME Boil and Pressure Vessel Code sections, including some exotic topics like Section 10, the fiber reinforced plastic pressure vessels, the Part UIG in Section 8 Division 1, dealing with graphite pressure equipment, and engineering contractors to Section 1, and many others. The current ASME conformity assessment programs are shown on the screen. You can see currently approximately 11,750 certificates are issued to about 6,900 certificate holders. The biggest portion is, of course, the BPV, the Boil and Pressure Vessels, covering Section 1, 4, 8, 10, 12, and Section 13 now, dealing with overpressure protection equipment. About 11,150 certificates are issued to BPV. 56% is now outside North America. 77% of the certificates are S and U, covering Section 1 and Section 8. About 20% of all certificates are now issued to Chinese companies, and approximately 150 certificates are PRT. PRT certificates are issued to companies which are producing, which are fabricating, but they're not responsible to the design. In the nuclear field, 44 certificates are issued to components, 63 to material organizations. 1 certificate is issued to utility, 1 to NQA1 quality program, and as you can see, 55% of all certificates are issued to companies outside North America. At the moment, there are 35 authorized inspection agencies. 10 companies are certified to reinforced thermoset plastic. 20 companies are holding 22 certificates for bioprocess equipment to produce fittings and also tubes. There are no companies certified to QPS. This is the new program for industrial quality programs. There are only applicants, but no companies which are certified. And probably for you, it's interesting to know that LRQA Verification Limited is going to hold a big webinar to this topic. It will be either late January or early February. And this event is going to be supported by ASME. So if you are interested, please write in the chat, and we're going to invite you to this event. Now, let's have a look at the common implementation deficiencies. As I mentioned, this topic is always relevant to know what is considered a deficiency, what the team leaders are writing as a deficiency, and of course, how to avoid those deficiencies. So a lot of deficiencies are being written in terms of design, in terms of material control, welding and welding qualifications, non-destructive examination, and other topics like calibration, certification, record retention, sample forms, etc. Presented as a chart, you can see that this is from statistical point of view. 30% of the deficiencies are related to design, which means that almost 1/3 of all deficiencies, or each third deficiency, is written due to design. Material control, ND, and welding are with approximately 20%, and all the rest is 10%. So when you have a joint review, you do need to concentrate on design, welding, ND, and material control. Of course, they are linked to each other, especially the material control and ND are very different compared to other codes and standards, international codes and standards. So these are traditionally the topics that need special attention. Just in terms of design, I've put here the most common deficiencies which are being written during joint reviews for you as information, and I classify them in 4 different categories. The first one is, of course, the bestseller in edition 2021, and this is the mandatory appendix 47 in section A, division 1. A lot of deficiencies are being written because the certificate holders still have a lot of problems to understand what the principle is, what the requirements are, and what the responsibilities are for them to deal with this topic. Procedure for qualification of individuals who perform design work does not meet the requirements of 47.4, which is a qualification of design activity. The procedure just copies the code requirements. This is really a problem. So many certificate holders are just copying the requirements from the code, but the requirements are just a frame, and this frame needs to be filled by the manufacturers. So this is something that the manufacturers need to do for themselves. There is no recipe for each organization. It looks differently. So the manufacturer stakeholders do need to understand the responsibilities and to write a procedure which is relevant to them. There is no evidence that persons in responsible charge designated per 47-1 and qualified in accordance with 47-2 and -3 meet the education and experience requirements of the code, which means that somebody is certified as being in responsible charge, but actually he or she does not meet the requirements. This is a common problem. A similar one refers to the designers, those who are engaged in design work while under responsible charge of somebody else. They are qualified as being designers, is meeting the requirements in 47.4, but actually they don't meet the requirements. Another problem is that engineers and designers are certified for the additional qualification in 47-5 are not meeting the requirements. So the company is saying that they meet the 2 years experience and also the training, for example, the numerical analysis, but they do not. So this is something that needs to be paid attention to. Those in responsible charge have not been actively engaged in engineering process from conception to completion. And this is very important. If you are in responsible charge, you do need to be engaged from the very beginning. This is the principle which was assumed in the 2021 edition of the code from the position statement number 10-1778. It's not enough if somebody is just verifying compliance, looking at the papers at the end. He does need to be engaged from the very beginning, and that needs to be comprehended. Another group of deficiencies refer to Appendix 10-5C, which is the verification of the computer programs. And so the computer program used to prepare the design calculations is not verified for each mathematical model used in the calculations, which means that there are certain parts of the pressure equipment where the calculations from the computer program software have not been verified. That needs to be done now according to the new edition of the code. The verification report does not contain defined limits for the evaluation. So there is evaluation report, there are results, but these results are not verifiable because the limits have not been specified. So it's not clear at the end of the day if the results are acceptable or not. Another group of deficiencies are relevant to loadings. The manufacturer's data report does not address design requirements and methods which are not covered in Section A Division 1. So somebody is using the U2G route, but this is not described and addressed in the manufacturer's data report. A user's design requirements form or other document with equivalent information is not available even though one or more of the design conditions listed in U-2A2A are applicable. So there are 6 loadings which require special attention now in Section A Division 1, and if even one of those loadings is relevant, then a user design requirement form or equivalent document needs to be issued. Loadings due to the attachment of external supports are not considered in the stress calculation for the vessel design. Another group is actually all other topics which might be related to the design. And I've put here some common deficiencies in this regard. For example, the drawing is not complete. The RT marking is incorrectly indicated on the nameplate. Wrong revision of reference standards on the drawings, for example, the B16 standards. Screening has not been done to determine whether fatigue assessment is required, and many others. In terms of material control, a very common deficiency is that the purchase order is not complete. So not all requirements of the material spec or the construction code are considered. The provided material test reports and certificates of compliance are incomplete or refer to wrong standards. This is a problem because a big difference from the pressure equipment directive, for example, other construction codes, is that in the ASME world, responsible is the manufacturer of the pressure equipment and not the material manufacturer. So the material manufacturer is being requested to provide a material and to provide, let's say, a material test report or COC for that material. But this is just a listing of the material testing and examinations being done. This is not a statement for conformity. So the manufacturer of the pressure equipment is still responsible for this, still expected to assess the material and to make sure that the material is appropriate for the pressure equipment. And so for that reason, the manufacturer, the certificate holder, does need to review these documents and to verify compliance with the material specification and construction code. This is a requirement for them, and this is something that they may not delegate to other organizations. Material is not traceable to the original required marking after taking from stock or after delivery from a subcontractor. So, for example, this head is being purchased by another organization, is being delivered with partial data report, but there is no traceability to the original marking. This is a problem because in this case, this material is not acceptable. It has not been verified whether parts from stock satisfy the applicable code requirements of the code edition which is used for the construction. Most of the parts taken from stock are in compliance with previous edition of the code. And so the certificate holders need to verify that the requirements of the current edition are also complied with. Material substitution is not handled as stipulated in the QC manual. Material substitution needs to be communicated and needs to be really addressed in the documentation. Receiving inspection report does not include or refer to original material marking, and there is no evidence that welded temporary attachments and non-pressure parts of welded quality, they don't need to be of acceptable material, but they do need to be of weldable quality, which means that at least the pin number should be marked on those parts. In terms of welding, there are a lot of deficiencies, but I've put here the most common: use of individuals performing supervision, control, and final acceptance of qualification testing are not qualified to UG 106. This is a requirement that came in addition to 2019. There are still a lot of problems with the implementation of UG 106 requirements. Everybody who is doing the supervision, control, and final acceptance need to be qualified to QG 106. There is no evidence of compliance with QG 106B for the designated welding supervisors. Sometimes somebody is designated as welding supervisor according to QG 106, but actually the requirements are not fulfilled, especially the one referring to the training commensurate to the activities being performed. Continuity of welders qualification is based on test date and not on welding date. You know, for ASME, important is a test date because the clock starts to tick from this moment on and not from the moment the document has been issued. Welder's log does not record the last day of welding used for the applicable welding process. The A number has not been determined correctly. For example, for GMAW welding process, just having the chemical composition of a catalog is not sufficient. According to the new edition of the code and QW-404.5, chemical analysis needs to be done, including document which is attesting the welding material. So this is something that does need to be considered. PQR does not include all required essential variables. Wrong acceptance criteria, this is a common problem. Wrong acceptance criteria in the ND interpretation test reports. Again, ND, like design, is something that may or may not be subcontracted, but when subcontracted, the manufacturer of the pressure equipment does need to verify that everything has been done correctly, so the code is complied with. Qualification range of a WPS is not supported by the available PQRs. And then jumping to the ND topic, there are really a lot of stuff here that can be communicated, but let's limit ourselves to those written here. And if you are interested in more ND topics, of course, let us know. So for Section 8, now applications, the written practice does not correctly describe the requirements of the right edition of SNTTC1A. as amended by Section 5. This is really a huge problem. ND subcontractors' written practice and qualifications are not reviewed and accepted by the manufacturer. Again, the manufacturer is responsible for the final compliance with the code, so the manufacturer doesn't need to verify everything. The requirements for at least one flawed specimen for each technique practical demonstration and at least 2 specimens for each ND method is not considered, although this is not a new requirement. In edition 2021, it was already in the code before that, but nevertheless, a lot of deficiencies are still being written on this. Calibration of density meters is not performed by reading density steps closest to 1, 2, 3, and 4. On the step wedge calibration film, for PT, MT, and UT, the written procedures are not certified to be in accordance with Section 5, Article 1T-150, and the image quality indicator is not placed on the source side, although this is a code requirement. It is placed on the film side without any apparent reason for this. And because we are on the ND topic, let's proceed with qualification certification of ND personnel. This topic is always relevant to the companies because, again, ND, along with the material control topic, is really something that is very different for ASME compared to other international codes and standards and directives. So I put here Section 1, Section 8, Division 1 and 2 because these are the mostly used construction codes within the ASME ball and pressure vessel code. And let's see what are the requirements for the qualification certification of ND personnel in those sections. Section 1 requires for the ND personnel to be qualified and certified in accordance with their employer's written practice. So written practice is required. But the addition of the written practice and the addition of the SNTTC1A and CP 189 to be considered for preparation of written practice is edition 2006. Still, the edition is 2006. ISO 9712 can be used to fulfill the examination and demonstration requirements of the employer's written practice. And in terms of surface examination, written practice is not required. So the only requirement in Section 1 is that the manufacturer must certify each MT and PT examiner to be competent in the technique and to have appropriate eyesight. Now pay attention to the word technique here, because written practice is not required for MT and PT examiners, but the certificate holder, the manufacturer, still needs to verify that they are competent for the technique within the ND method. This is very important because one can be very skillful for one technique, but not necessarily very experienced and capable of performing another technique. So the technique is important, and for that reason, the code requires from the certificate holders, the manufacturers, to verify and to certify also that the examiners are competent. Section 8, Division 1 has the requirement for qualification of any personnel to be qualified and certified in accordance with Section 5, Article 1 T-120. So they make direct reference to Section 5 for this. And in Section 5, Article 1 T-120E, the code says that the qualification shall be in accordance with the employer's written practice. And now the written practice must be prepared considering SNTTC1A 2016 edition as amended by Mandatory Appendix 3 or CP-189 edition 2020 as amended by Mandatory Appendix 4, which means that for Section 8 Division 1, and this is the case also for Division 2, the written practice must be in accordance with other edition of SNTTC1A or CP-189 compared to Section 1. This is sometimes a problem for those companies which are certificate holders for both sections. And in this case, there are basically 3 options: either to make one written practice with separated requirements for section 1 and section 8, or one written practice with joint requirements, taking the most restrictive ones, or to prepare two written practices, which is not very practical. ISO 9712 can be used, but please pay attention to the fact that if you use ISO 9712 to fulfill the employer's written practice, which is based on SNTDC1A, for example, still the practical and the specific examinations need to be performed in addition. So SNTDC1A will recognize the training experience, the general examination for level 1 and 2, basic and method examinations for level 3, but the specific and practical exams still need to be done. In terms of MT and PT, Section A Division 1 has exactly the same requirements as Section 1, so the examiners need to be certified as competent, and they have to have the appropriate eyesight. Section 8 Division 2 requires for all NDE methods written practice. So just announcing the MT and PT examiners as competent is not sufficient. They also need to be qualified according to written practice. And the written practice must be based on SNTDC1A or CP 189, exactly the same editions and amended by the same mandatory appendices as for Section 8 Division 1. And now let's take a look at a couple of changes in mandatory appendix 3 in edition 2021. And I'm stressing on this because those changes must be addressed in all employers' written practices because these are new requirements now. So that cannot be neglected. And these new changes in appendix 3 does need to be addressed now in the written practice. Otherwise, it will be a deficiency during the joint review. So first of all, we have a couple of new definitions. For example, detection rate now. This is the number of percentage of false calls allowed for a test specimen as defined by ND level 3. We have methods. We have level 3 demonstration and practical, which is one of the most substantial changes in edition 2021. So the level 3 has to undergo examinations, and it could be a demonstration, it could be a practical exam. And so the definition says that a level 2 practical examination required for individuals performing examinations, interpretations, or evaluations in each NDE method and technique for which certification is being sought, and this is considered demonstration. The practical is the act of successfully writing a code-compliant NDE procedure. So procedure is a practical exam, and practical examination is demonstration. This is really something that confuses the code users, but I think these definitions will remain also in edition 2023. We have introduction of techniques now, so it's not sufficient just to write NDE method. You do need to specify it now also the technique within the NDE method, because again, somebody may be skillful and capable of performing one technique, but not necessarily very prepared to perform another technique. So the technique does need to be specified now. We have a new note to table 631A, and this is note number 11, saying that the practical examination shall consist of a number of radiographs to demonstrate satisfactory performance as determined by the NDE level 3, or provide documented experience as deemed appropriate by the level 3. So the level 3 will decide basically how many radiographs are going to be used for the examination, and also what is considered to be a sufficient experience for somebody who is going to be qualified for radiographic interpretation, so that this will be countable for the practical exam. In point 8.1.4, which is dealing with examinations, there is now a new requirement for grading of practical examinations on multiple specimens. So in case of multiple specimens, the when practical examinations are required to be performed on such multiple specimens, those examinations will be graded independently, which means that we have minimum 80% pass grade for each practical exam. So if I have now multiple specimens, for each of them, I need to reach 80% pass score. Otherwise, I will fail. Some important new requirements in 854 and 855 dealing with level 1 and level 2 practical examinations. For level 1, there is now the requirement to have 2 or more specimens, previously only 1 or more. And also the written practice show address when required by the level 3 detection rates, as well as maximum number of false calls that are acceptable. And please also note that the practical examination shall contain checkpoints where a failure to successfully recognize the problems will result in failure of the whole exam. So from 10 checkpoints, the level 3 may say for checkpoint 1, 4, 7, and 10, for example, I need 100% success. Otherwise, the whole examination will be considered failed. So this is what the code now expects from the level 3 when they prepare the checklists for the practical examinations. Also, for some questions, the level 3 can determine, a minimum detection rate, maximum false calls, for example, maximum 10% false calls, which means that for the evaluation of the deficiency, I have been more stringent, and something which is indication I have evaluated as a defect, but it's not a defect. So nevertheless, if this is just a single case, I will not fail. But this needs to be specified by the level 3 when he prepares the practical exam. That needs to be specified. For level 2, it is more or less the same case, but with the addition that the candidate shall detect at least 80% of discontinuities and conditions. A very controversial new requirement is for the level 3 practical examination and demonstration. 876 says that the level 3 practical examination shall be completed by writing a code-compliant ND procedure for each ND method for which certification is being sought, as determined by the level 3. Level 3 decides on everything, so don't be surprised when you read as determined by ND level 3. He's the one who decides how the practical examination is going to be performed and following which rules. For individuals who have previously written code-compliant ND procedures, where evidence of those procedures can be provided to and is approved by the ND level 3 again, writing a new ND procedure for that method is not required. So in other words, when you have level 3 practical exam, the level 3 must demonstrate that he is capable of performing, of preparing ND written procedure, either during the exam or his capabilities can be recognized by the level 3 if there is objective evidence of already prepared, of course, successfully prepared ND written procedures. But this is decision to be taken by the ND level 3. And now, for the demonstration, which is basically a practical examination as for level 2. So the code says now that for level 3s performing ND examinations, interpretations, or evaluations, a level 3 demonstration consisting of a level 2 practical examination is required for each ND method and technique for which certification is being sought. The demonstration shall be in accordance with 855, which is the practical examination for level 2. For administrative level 3 who does not perform ND examinations, interpretations, or evaluations, such demonstration does not apply. So now, what is controversial and the crux here is basically what is examination, interpretation, evaluation. Because if I'm level 3 and I've done some of these, then I need to undergo practical examination for level 2. So a lot of discussions have been conducted on this topic, and also ASME was involved, and also the Committee on General Requirements and Qualification of ND Personnel was involved. And I can assure you that half of the committee believes that, for example, administration of level 2 practical examination is considered examination, interpretation, and evaluation. And with this, the level 3 must undergo practical exam for level 2. And half of the committee believes that it is not applicable. So even the committee is not 100% clear and agreed if the administration of level 2 examination will require practical examination for the level 3 personnel. And I'm happy that in edition 2023, this will be remedied. And so we'll have a very clear requirement in T-120 saying that if the level 3 wants to administer level 2 examinations, then he must undergo also a practical exam for level 2. The last change I've put in this presentation is concerning the recertification. So the recertification period is back to 5 years for levels 1 and 2, which was not the case in edition 2021 of mandatory appendix 3. And now, again, we have 5 years for all levels. The requirement for recertification based on satisfactory continuing technical performance is now gone. So it's not allowed to have recertification based on experience and based on successful and satisfactory performance. And the requirements in 12.1.2 are now incorporated in one, which means that level 3 decides which portions of the examination needs to be repeated during practical examinations. And with this presentation is to its end. So it's time for questions and, of course, answers. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Parvan. Thank you for the detailed presentation that you've put together. I'm sure there'll be quite a number of questions. So the questions could be put on the right-hand side of the screen in the chat function. So if there's any questions, then please put that in. And then if we go to the next slide, Parvan, there's our email addresses as well. So there's also contact details of Dr. Parvan and myself, of course, more of a local support that you have here. One question that came across, Parvan, is with the new additions to the codes that you mentioned in your presentation, what kind of impact do you see on our business? What's your views on that? One of the questions that came across.
Impact which business, of the agencies or the certificate holders? Certificate holders. Well, you know, the certificate holders need to be aware of the new of the changes in the code. This has always been the case, and this will remain to be the case. The responsibility of the certificate holder is to be familiar with those changes and to decide which of these changes are decisive for their business, for their certificate, because if they are such, they need to be addressed in the quality manual, and the quality manual needs to be revised and implemented by the end of the year, which means next year, July 1st, of course, hopefully in July 1st, the new edition will be published. And so the certificate holders will have 6 months for them to review the code, to understand the new requirements, to address the new requirements of their quality program, and to start implementing them by the end of the year. That would be the impact. And of course, we as an agency will be very supportive to the companies, and we will make webinars to and also seminars and workshops whatsoever to communicate all these new changes with the companies and trying to help them to decide for themselves what needs to be considered by them.
Thank you, Parvan. Hope that was clear and addressed the question. We also have another question that came across is who should administer the the practical examination of level 3? Is it required to be administered by another level 3?
Yes. So administration of level of each exam needs to be done by a level 3. Absolutely. Even if the one who is taking the exam is level 3, that needs to be administered by another level 3.
Okay, I think that was very clear. Another question that came up is it required to have IWE certification for welding engineer in ASME as it is a requirement for ISO 3834?
So ASME doesn't say how the personnel will be qualified in accordance to QG 106. So this is the company's responsibility to decide for themselves what is important for them and which requirements actually this individual who is going to be qualified according to QG 106 needs to comply. So I can give you an example. So the company needs the first step is to define the criticality and also the complexity of the welding processes they are applying in the company. There may be companies applying just one welding process, which is very simple. For example, GTAW. In this case, the welding supervisor doesn't need to be, aware of other processes. He needs to be aware of GTAW. This can be provided by training, experience, or other means. Again, the company decides on that. If they have to deal with a lot of welding processes and they are very complex, and they have also, for example, overlay, they have hard facing, they have brazing, fusing, etc. So it means that the welding supervisor needs to be familiar with all these processes. And again, this can be achieved by training. This can be achieved by additional education. Most of the companies in Europe prescribe in their quality programs that the welding supervisor must be at least welding technologist or welding specialist, and even welding engineer for that, because they have the persons anyways. And it makes sense for the welding supervisor to have a broad knowledge about welding. But this is not a code requirement to start from the beginning. ASME doesn't specify this. This is a requirement for the certificate holder to decide how stringent they want to be when they define the requirements for the qualification of those individuals who will be qualified according to QG 106 as welding supervisors. I hope this is clear. If not, you can contact me and we can have a separate discussion on this.
Okay, thank you, Parvan. I think that was a clear response. We've also received a general question in regards to the main differences between LR and LRQA. Maybe I could take the question and just discuss it. So yeah, as many are aware, LRQA was acquired in December last year by Goldman Sachs, who took over from LR. The main differences is actually very clear. So the LR will continue to operate in the marine field, and LRQA will continue to work from an industrial point of view. So of course, from a compliance work in many industrial sectors that we are very muchly involved in, and we do have our other business assurance and our consultancy services that we provide as a group of companies. So probably the main answer to that is mainly LR marine, LRQA industrial. So that's the main distinguished differences. Just let me see if
may I add something, say from ASME perspective. From ASME perspective, it is very clear now. So LRQA is the successor of Lloyd's Register. Lloyd's Register is no more ASME agency. We took the whole accreditation and we got the whole accreditation transferred from Lloyd's Register to LRQA, and that was accepted by ASME, the national board, late 2022.
Great. And then I think another general question that came about in terms of our region here in the Middle East, and do we have any, or do we have full-time inspectors in these regions? So yeah, of course, I mean, to answer that is, yeah, the region that I stipulated previously is the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt. And these, we have full-time inspectors supporting many of our clients in the region, and we are going through a growth here as well. So we are looking into recruitment. We have 2 new hires that will be joining the team, for example, in the UAE this month and next, and other recruitments will join in first quarter of next year. So there is a drive to grow, a drive to support many of our clients, and that's our. We remain committed to our core business, which is one of them is ASME. So I can't see any more questions. Feel free to add it to the chat now. If need be, you could send myself or Parvan an email, and we could address any issues that you have. Maybe to highlight again, there'll be a small survey that will be shared with you in the end of this presentation. 3 questions. We appreciate your support there in completing. And as Parvan said, this is just one of the presentations that we'll be given. We plan to have a plan of webinars that will commence in 2023. All the details will be shared with you. And if there is any specific topics that you would like us to cover, then of course we would like that to, we would take that into consideration.
I assume that probably the most important topic will be the code changes in edition 2023.
Yes.
And again, starting May and June, we will commence our program with seminars and webinars to this topic. We're going to communicate the most important changes in edition 2023. So if we are interested, please contact the local, our local representatives, and they will be in a position, and they will be they will forward this information to me so that we can start considering you and including you in our events for 2023. But again, I think the code changes in 2023 edition will be the highlight next year, and we'll be very active making presentations about those changes.
Great. So I think this wraps up our presentation. We thank you all for attending, and we will see you at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the attention.